Mr. Poilievre, what economic and diplomatic experience do you have to go up against Donald Trump?
Oh, quite a lot, actually.
Pierre Poilievre absolutely destroyed some woke reporters today and also ripped Mark Carney to shreds. This is possibly a must-watch like no other. We're going to be talking about some of the funniest and most head-turning moments that happened during Mark Carney's coronation yesterday, including the CBC getting fact-checked on air and also saying things on air that they normally wouldn't, and I think they immediately regretted. Lots of really, really bizarre things happened last night with the Liberal leadership race and Mark Carney becoming the new Prime Minister of Canada. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, like, comment your thoughts down below. And of course, be sure to give me a follow on other social media platforms as well. And we get to fact check and debunk some of the latest left-leaning talking points in defense of Mark Carney. The state of the world right now is nothing short of very concerning and nefarious, right? You have governments who are left-leaning, who say that everything that they do is out of compassion and it's for your benefit. It's for you. It's to protect our democracy. But then they go and do things like this. So if you are on X, you may be familiar with the fact that it has been down on and off throughout the day. It's been lagging really bad. You've been booted out. And the reason why is because of a massive DDoS attack. Now, DDoS attacks, if you've never heard of them before, it stands for Distributed Denial of Service. It is a cyber crime. It essentially is where an attacker will go and flood the server with unfathomable amounts of internet traffic to prevent users from accessing that service online because it overwhelms the system. DDoS attacks have long been used for conservative political commentators, people who have their own independent websites, and also now on X because people are attacking Elon Musk in X. They're mad about Doge. They're mad about the fact that free speech is allowed on X. And they say that the misinformation and disinformation from that is the biggest threat to our democracy. So in this case, Elon Musk posted this a couple hours ago. He says there still is a massive cyber attack against X. We get attacked every day, but this was done with a lot of resources. Either a large coordinated group and or a country is involved. Tracing. The thing about this that's kind of helpful is that you can actually, once the attack is over, you can go into your servers and you can see where it came from. If you watch Candace Owens as an example, when she released her entire series on the Macron case, she was attacked largely from people located in France, and it shut down her entire website for a few days. So we don't know where this one came from yet, but we will end up finding out sooner or later.
I am proud to be a Liberal in Canada. We are the party of the Charter. We are the party of the Maple Leaf. We are the party of multiculturalism. We are the party of reconciliation. We are the party that fights climate change, and we are the party of national childcare.
I mean, you've seen just how much our debt, mass immigration, and our ideological obsession with climate change has actually been a far greater threat to our democracy than that of Donald Trump and that of fake news and misinformation.
The federal government needs to get out of our way. They need to get behind these nation-building projects so we can build a more prosperous and secure future for Canada. I also want to thank Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for his many years of service to Canada. You know, we didn't always agree, but when it mattered, Prime Minister Trudeau was always willing to put party and ideology aside.
Marty up north wrote, that didn't take long. Up until a few months ago, this guy was living in another country, dining on champagne and caviar. Most of you had never heard of him. He had never thrown his hat into any political arena whatsoever. Now he's the Prime Minister designate of Canada. And I will say it's been quite entertaining to see the amount of people, because I post on all platforms. I post daily on TikTok, and there's a lot of liberals there who will comment and they say things like, well, I voted for Carney because I remember how he saved us during the 2008 financial crisis. To which my response is often, do you even know who the Bank of Canada, the governor of the Bank of Canada is today? It's crickets every single time. Also, I tried to do my darndest to fact check a lot. Don't get me wrong. Mark Carney was voted one of Time's most influential people of the year in 2010. But outside of that, there wasn't any publications of him that I could find. If you find them, please send them my way. From, CTV or CBC or anything like that, that in any way, shape, or form credited Mark Carney to saving Canada during the financial crisis until he announced that he was planning to run. And then all of a sudden, all of the outlets started pushing that narrative en masse, which is why people now think that. But, I had a conversation with Rick Perkins, MP out of Nova Scotia, not terribly long ago on this channel, where he said, no, Jim Flaherty was the guy who saved Canada. And the reason why Canada didn't collapse in the same way as America did when they went through that was due to pre-existing laws, policies, regulations that we had in banking in Canada. That's what saved us. All of those things existed long before Mark Carney ever stepped on the scene. And if you want to thank anybody, it's Jim Flaherty and his decisions as finance minister under Stephen Harper. It's the Harper government who did that. We don't go and thank governors of the Bank of Canada for anything because they only do what they are able to do under a government, under pre-approval, under the existing structure. It's just such a ridiculous narrative that everybody is saying now, and they just read it, they believe it. It's not even true. They don't even care to look into it, because being able to say that makes you feel like you're virtuous for voting for the guy who has actually done some pretty awful things for this country, as Pierre Poilievre highlights.
Never before have we had a prime minister so conflicted and compromised and yet so little scrutinized. Just like when he supported carbon taxes in Canada while investing in American coal. He opposed Canadian pipelines while his company bought Middle East pipelines. He has millions of dollars of financial interests that run against Canada's national interests. He gets rich making Canadians poor. You can be sure about one thing. Donald Trump's going to have a briefing on his desk of all of Mark Carney's American investments. And he is going to leverage all of Carney's profit motive against the interest of the Canadian people. And we know Carney will sell out Canada for his personal profit. He's already done it. He's systematically done it his entire time as a corporate insider. Giving the Liberals a fourth term will not change any of that. Carney puts himself first.
There is some very serious jaw-dropping information coming out about Mark Carney, some speculations about him that, gosh darn, I mean, it's really pointing you in that direction of probably being truth. But let's just hear from Mark Carney's own words before we just go ahead and fact-check him.
You demanded action, and now it's time for the financial sector to deliver. To reach net zero, every country, every company, every bank, every investor, every pension fund around the world will need to make some big changes.
I have a very big feeling that a lot of what I'm about to say may or may not get this video demonetized. Unfortunately, I won't know until after it gets uploaded, but in the event that you can manage to support anything, that would obviously be greatly appreciated. I am literally a one-man show. This is my biggest priority, my biggest passion is being able to share this with you. So there is a link to PayPal donations in the description as well as the pinned comment. I'm not trying to beg, I'm just trying to say that I have been blacklisted from ever working in mainstream media again. Proof of that, by the way, with a direct message that I received last night after posting about Mark Carney from a former program director who worked for Chorus Entertainment in Canada. So that's juicy. Stay tuned.
I know how the world works. And I know how it can be made to work better for all of us.
So here's something that I want to make incredibly clear, as risky as it may be to say it, but it is the truth. There is absolutely scientific basis of some sort in terms of reducing emissions and that being beneficial, okay? However, net zero in particular is a WEF global idea. It is an ideology that is far more entrenched in political control than anything at all in terms of actual environmental benefits. There's a lot of other options that people could have in terms of reducing their emissions that oftentimes get absolutely ignored because the unrealistic, costly, and centralized net zero mandate is in. And that is a mandate that is in that people only care about because the government has used fear for decades to make you think that that is a very, very good thing.
Poilievre would let our planet burn.
Net zero would be something that destroys the economy, destroys business, and destroys the middle class while enriching the elite, while enriching people like Mark Carney who push this, right? And so Mark Carney can go ahead and say as much as he wants, oh, Poilievre is a career politician. I would far rather have a career politician than I would ever have a career political lobbyist making the decisions when all of his assets and investments, his books, everything about him is about that net zero. Those policies disproportionately hurt working class while enriching the global elites who profit from carbon markets. Isn't it weird to you how a man who says that he is all about climate change, also has investments in coal and in oil and in all of these other things that he's trying to eliminate from other countries? Why would he do that? For something that he knows we desperately need as a civilization. He wants to make that competition even smaller by driving everybody else out so that his investments prosper. And then here he is laughing and mocking about the fact that he has not gone before an ethics commissioner, even though he very well could have. He chose not to until after he was given the most prestigious role in our government.
Full disclosure. I know the leader of the opposition's into full disclosure, so I'm going to... Full disclosure. Full disclosure. Just want to get this on the table.
And listen to this. CBC got fact-checked live on air when they tried to talk about this exact same blunder. Another lie of Mark Carney's.
To be fair, he stood up in front of Prime Minister Trudeau and said, getting rid of your carbon tax, getting rid of your capital gains tax, here are the things that the economy has to do to grow. I mean, that's not the same as Justin Trudeau.
He's rebranding the carbon tax. He's shifting it to just an industrial base instead of consumer, where it's still going to be trickled down on Canadians. It's just, we remember the Liberals never actually called it carbon tax at the beginning either, right? That was a framing of Conservatives that it became known as.
A successful training.
It's still going to be a carbon tax. A carbon tax is a carbon tax.
And another funny moment from CBC was when they admitted that there was more people at the Poilievre Canada First rally than there was at the entire Liberal leadership convention.
And Pierre Poilievre did hold a rally today that was bigger than what we had here. It was more than 2,000 people, and it was his regular Canada First rally that he's holding.
There's two things. There's two parts of his legacy. Liberal leader, I think he will have a strong legacy as a leader of this party who brought it from 35 seats when you folks worked there to majority government. And then he won 2 more elections. Like, he is a good campaigner. He was a good Liberal leader. I think he was a terrible prime minister, as none of you guys will be surprised to hear me say.
Really?
Terrible,
That's
absolutely.
Harsh. Okay.
He accumulated more debt than all other 22 prime ministers combined before him. And I know he's had some issues to deal with COVID and other, but he blew the doors off of us in terms of our fiscal capacity. I also believe under his leadership, Canada's become much more divided. He was supposed to be this uniter, the sunny ways. He was a wedge issue politician at a very aggressive rate. And the last thing is the economy and where we are now, and where Mark Carney is about to be coronated as leader and said himself a few weeks ago, the Canadian economy is weak. We are dealing with the Trump issue because we have a weak economy here, and we have issues that we need to deal with on this. We're not in a good position, and it's because of the last 9 years of his government.
I think, though, I'll let my Liberal friends push back, but I do think that there is a recognition from Mark Carney that the economy is not where it should be.
Well,
right? Like,
yeah, he said it was a weak.
Said that. Yeah. Okay. That's what you said. Okay.
He himself said the economy is bad. Now, he's been an economic advisor for the last 5 years, so I'm not sure where exactly it sits. I mean, who's responsible?
All right. Vandana, you want to jump in?
Right after this announcement was made, I posted online. I said, shocker, unelected Mark Carney is the new Prime Minister of Canada. 4th place, Frank. 3rd, Karina. 2nd, Chrystia. 1st, unelected Mark Carney. Donald Trump is the biggest threat to our democracy, though. And I was quite surprised by the amount of people who then started responding back to it and saying things like, oh, well, what about John Turner? What about Kim Campbell? What about Danielle Smith? So let's just fact check this. John Turner is a liberal, so, I mean, second strike, I guess. Kim Campbell, conservative. However, both Turner and Campbell they won leadership races within their respective parties while being sitting members of parliament. That is the big difference here, right? They were already elected officials, and then their party had a majority government. Here's a very big key difference with those two in terms of prime ministership. They were not outsiders who immediately were propelled to the top contending role in our government system. They were active politicians who were elected by the public and then their own party to receive such a title. I wouldn't be saying the same stuff at all if it was Chrystia Freeland, because I'm aware of how our system works, even though there's a lot of complaints that I do have about it, because yes, Chrystia Freeland is an elected official. Danielle Smith, another one that's just kind of weird, is that, big difference here. She was an MLA, which is Alberta's version of an MP, basically, before she became premier. So she didn't just walk off the streets, give some people some money and say, I want to do this. And they said, okay, we're going to make it happen for you. She became premier because she won the United Conservative Party leadership following Kenney's resignation. So yes, she was chosen by party members in an internal race and was already elected in office, unlike Mark Carney. Whereas Mark Carney, as an example, has never been elected as an MP, MLA, or any political office. He's never led a political party. He has zero democratic mandate from Canadians to be our prime minister, and he is the first unelected prime minister with no direct voter support in Canadian history. And in an attempt to be condescending, I suppose, or to try to have a gotcha moment, I don't know, this guy who I've met before, he's a former media program director. If you're unfamiliar with the industry, a program director is kind of like the head honcho of a TV station or a radio station. It's the person who does the hiring, the firing, who decides what's happening content-wise, all of that stuff. So he sent me this. He's 50 plus years old, by the way. And he wrote, we don't elect prime ministers in Canada. We elect members of parliament. This isn't even poli-sci 101. It's like grade 8 level, ... Of course, I responded with, he isn't a member of parliament, so that's kind of the point.
Mr. Poilievre, what economic and diplomatic experience do you have to go up against Donald Trump?
Oh, quite a lot, actually. So I was the Minister of Jobs and Housing in the Harper government, during which time housing cost half as much as it does today. I helped Mr. Harper cut the GST, cut income tax, cut business tax, and balance the budget. Over my time in Parliament, I've been scrutinizing and studying the books on the Public Accounts Committee, the Operations Committee, the Finance Committee. And if you want any proof that my economic ideas are the best, the Liberals are all trying to pretend that they're copying them right before the election. All the big economic questions of the last 5 years, Mark Carney has been wrong and exactly wrong, and I have been right. I said 5 years ago the money printing would cause inflation. He said deflation was on the horizon. I turned out to be right. I said the carbon tax would drive up food prices, and it did. Drove them up 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. I was the first parliamentarian to predict that we would have the inflation crisis, while Carney, Freeland, Trudeau, and others were saying that we would not. I was the first one to be, along with my Conservative colleagues, fighting for pipelines. Pipelines now everyone claims that they support after opposing them for the last 10 years. So if Mr. Carney is so smart on economics, how is it that he was so wrong for so long on all of the economic issues? One thing I don't have experience with is taking jobs out of Canada, moving them to the United States, selling out our resource workers to support Middle Eastern resource workers. That's not the kind of experience that I have, but that's not the kind of experience that we want.
I've heard from various sources of mine in Ottawa, as well as people across the country who are very big in covering politics, that realistically an election will be called within the next week, possibly a little bit later than that, a federal election. So we will see how all of that unfolds. But nonetheless, Mark Carney has been selected, not elected, to be the Prime Minister of Canada as soon as he gets sworn in. And I just thought this deep dive was very, very interesting and worth your while.
And here we have a direct reference to his relationship to Donald Trump's policies. Speaking just hours after U.S. President Donald Trump posted a tweet blaming Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's policies for creating fears of an economic recession and threatening China with more retaliatory tariffs, Carney urged central banks to collaborate in replacing the U.S. dollar as reserve currency. He cautioned against choosing another new hegemonic reserve currency and suggested instead a new synthetic hegemonic currency. Whoa, that is a heck of a phrase to choose. A synthetic hegemonic currency, or SHC. And you can tell that this guy is
a shitcoin.
Yeah. You can tell this guy's really good with his words, because the other thing that I've highlighted at the top of the page here under wealth inequalities is that actually in 2011, this is in the fallout from the 2008 financial crisis. It says that Carney referred to the Occupy Wall Street protests as entirely constructive, which is not what you would expect from a central banker. And it takes a second to think about this. This is a central banker that is playing the side of Occupy Wall Street, saying, yeah, these guys are actually, they bring up great points. We should bring down pay gaps between CEOs and workers. We really are hearing the people of our nations. And to me, that screams highly advanced political operative, because clearly a guy with a resume of banking of this high of a profile, he's not working on behalf of the workers of this world. But that rhetoric is exactly what I would expect to hear from a high-level political operative that is designed to sound like he is working on behalf of workers of this world, right?
I'm still waiting patiently for Justin Trudeau to issue a similar statement about Mark Carney winning as he did about Donald Trump winning.
Just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
And you will not believe who Mark Carney just appointed. Another liberal liar with a rap sheet of lies, possibly bigger than his own.
That Marco Mendicino will be the chief of staff for Mark Carney. So, but we don't know at this stage whether or not that is going to be part of a transition period or a permanent move.
Very curious as well to know if Freeland and Karina Gould end up getting a seat around the table with Mark Carney, as both of them have publicly said that had they won, they would definitely choose him to be their finance minister. And I'm curious if he will give them a role or not. This is a developing story that is so unbelievably juicy, corrupt, and gross. And we're going to be talking about it a lot over the coming days. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single update. You can also like the video and comment your thoughts down below. I also have an interview that I did a number of weeks ago now with somebody who you could say specializes in the woke mind virus, written a couple books about it, and appeared on a lot of podcasts about it as well. So I'm very excited for you to hear that, given everything that is going on right now. That is going to be dropping tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Over Opinionated.
Trudeau was totally a globalist puppet, but nobody took him seriously. Not even his own people took him seriously. The international community didn't take him seriously. The United States didn't take him